I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Take a moment before we get started here to hit a subscribe button wherever you're listening from today, whether it's YouTube, whether it's one of the podcasts, or whether you're now listening on Spotify. You can hit follow along right there or subscribe. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, Johnette Napolitano. We're going to be talking about the 25th anniversary of the Concrete Blonde album called Mexican Moon. It would be the final Concrete Blonde record for a while. We'll get into the rough patches that surrounded the recordings, what happened before and afterwards, but also the magic of what happened while in the studio. There's some talk about Latino art, as well as brand new music. In fact, it was on the day we taped this that Johnette had just released a new single. It's Kyle Meredith with Johnette Napolitano of Concrete Blonde.
Oh, hi there. It's Johnette. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
What we're talking about here is Mexican Moon, the fifth album from Concrete Blonde, celebrating 25 years, officially October 19th. Is it
really?
one?
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
is it one that you've thought about at all, listened to it all lately by chance?
Oh, no, I have not in a very long time. No, I haven't. But it doesn't mean that I don't know the songs.
I hope so.
You know, I don't sit around listening to myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm working on new stuff. As a matter of fact, today, a new single is called Riding the Moon. You can find it on YouTube and Apple Music and all that. It's coming out in New Zealand on New Zealand radio today. And today's my brother's birthday, so that's very cool because he would have been, I think, 58. So it's all good. It's fall. It's the equinox. My birthday was the other day. This is very cool. So it's a good vibe. I'm in a good mood.
Wow. No.
What about you?
No, that's great how that all lined up, and I didn't know about the new single yet, so that's even more exciting right now. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm just online with the radio people. It's just going out, and it's going out to NPR as well. So it's really cool. It's a collaboration. The song is great. Riding the Moon. It's just brilliant. There's a couple of really great people on it. Ben Woods, who's an amazing flamenco player and fuses flamenco and metal. He's one of the only people besides me that think that's a great idea. And Jesus Montoya, who's one of the premier gypsy-born flamenco singers, is great. And it was animated by – that's how it all came about. I got called to do a voiceover for an animated thing from a New Zealand animator, graphic artist, and he was so good that I had to have him do something for me. And so it's taken a couple of years, but he's done, we collaborate. That's what's so cool about the internet is what you can do artistically, and not have to be there. I mean, we're collaborating with New Zealand from the desert, on a mountain. It's just crazy, and it's awesome. And so that's done, and it's beautiful, and that's on YouTube. You can see that, and it's just, oh my God, it's just so cool. So we're entering that in film festivals in South by Southwest and Berlin, and it's very, very cool, man. I'm loving all the things you can do on your own now that you didn't need to have meetings with 12 people
right.
in 5 different departments back in the day. You know what I mean? You can make a great video, and I'm working on another one for Halloween. So it's just really, it's fun. It's like, you know what I mean? Weed's legal, and you can make a little animation. I mean, and call it a job. Are you kidding?
What a time to be alive, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know.
I get a check for making it to the old age, so they reward you with a little money, and I'm just like, this is awesome.
Not bad. So are these just little one-offs right now? Is that what this is? Or does this lead to, like, the complete collection, album, whatever you want to call that? Or is this just...
It is exactly leading to an album. There's the plan that I started my own little company about, 3 years ago. So the original plan was to slow build and a quality, visual is very important, so it was all about having a great piece and a great video at least once a year. And I've done that, and this year will even be 2. So that's really cool. So when you go to Johnette Napolitano on YouTube, there's 3 videos there. And it's for 1 a year, and now we're picking up a little bit of steam, because one of the things I don't need to do either is flog myself, you know what I mean? And I'm quite a manic person, by nature, and run on nervous energy. And so as a matter of fact, I was just in the studio in LA on my birthday with Gabriel, who's been my drummer now for quite a few years. He's a Virgo too. So we did some stuff in there, and I drove home, and my ass was kicked. I was in bed for 2 days, and I'm like, God, I lived for years like that, like pedal to the metal, stay in the studio. 12 hours at a time, and then, get some coffee and go, get on do whatever. It's just, the spirit is willing, but the fact is, it's important to take care of yourself at this point in time. And I want to keep doing it. It's just a different pace and a different way. You know what I mean? So it's cool. It's all good.
Well, first off, and I didn't get to slip that in there, but happy birthday!
Thank you.
We're right on the line split because I'm a Libra. Mine happens this Sunday, so it's close, but
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my dad's is on the 14th, and he would have. He's around, believe me, but you just can't see him. And so he's the Libra. So there's definitely a lot of, and I'm on the cusp. So I'm just on the Virgo Libra cusp, and so there's a lot of that energy going on. The cusp of beauty is what it is, and Libras are very beautiful. Venus is your ruling planet, which is the beauty planet. So it's a beautiful world for you.
Yeah, you've already made me feel great about just everything at the moment. So that's
Oh, good. Well, that's good. My work is done here. That's good.
I'll obviously be looking forward to this new music. That's got me really excited. But if you don't mind heading down the time portal right now, 25 years to Mexican Moon, this to me is an amazing record. It's an outstanding record. It's still a masterpiece of an album. There are a lot of fans who called this the best Concrete Blonde album, but at the time
Including
it came
me,
out, at the time it came out, it got sort of lost in everything, didn't it?
It did, and it did because there was enormous upheaval going on in the record industry at the time, and because I'm the Typhoid Mary of the music business, that was the second label, I think, that it had gone under, or the first of 2 or 3 that they just fell like dominoes for a period of time there. And one day I was in a meeting in Capitol in the iconic tower in Hollywood, and we'd signed a Capitol, and one minute I'm in there with 11 people having a meeting about a video, and the next day they were all fired. I was literally running around the place leaving notes in people's desks and shit because it was totally empty. There was nobody there. And so it was, and to be fair to the label, the personnel changes are never a good thing in any company that you work for, and heads roll and all that sort of stuff. So it was really a bad timing. And the label had come to me and said, can you wait 6 months till we get reestablished to put this out? And I didn't wait 6 months. And maybe I should have, maybe I wouldn't have. I subconsciously knew we weren't getting along at the time at all. Jim and I were not getting along at the time. And it was actually a very, the thing I remember most about it, unfortunately, is that Paul Thompson, we were in the middle of actually the Roxy Music track, End of the Line, and we were at the studio in Cahuenga, a very funky old place, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but I can't. It probably says on the record if somebody looks it up. But old place in the 70s, like really a wacky old situation, and up my alley. And we'd just done the drums, and we literally had glasses in the air having a drink because it just came out so great. And Paul got a call that his mother was hospitalized, and she's all the way up in north of England in Newcastle, so that to get there he would have to fly to London, and he would have to change planes and get up to Newcastle. And so it was really a bad vibe because obviously it was a long way away, and she was in pretty bad shape. And so it went from euphoria 1 minute to, oh no, it's really horrible. It was really, really sad, but we knew we'd done something great. It was a really, and I agree. I think it's a really layered record. I think it was a really interesting time. The vibes were really, really good, you know. I mean, aside from the bad vibes, there were good vibes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm putting things so well, but there were great vibes around the music. You know, we were really happy to sign to Capitol because that's legendary stuff. And I remember when we signed to Capitol, and I sent my grandfather, they just put out this Frank Sinatra record with all the duets on it and everything. And I got the swag, I got the shirt, I got the record, and put it into a boombox that I bought and packed the whole thing ready to go so that all my grandpa had to do was put on the shirt, plug in the boombox, and he could have his Sinatra because we were on the same label as Sinatra, and that was a very big deal.
Right.
So there was a lot of energy surrounding it. But the new president, whose work I tremendously respect also, but he had his pet stuff that he wanted to push, and that's what happens in the record business. You know, when your A&R guy got fired, you were fucked because basically, you know, your guy, your point man was gone, you know, and so you were really in the position of having to sell yourself to a new regime, and chances are the new regime are there because they have their stuff that they want to do. They want to be creatively satisfied, and that's why they're in the music business in the first place, ideally, or once upon a time it was that way. So I think it's still that way, you know. So the format has changed, but people are still there. They've gone on to do other things in different ways and blogs and what have you. And so, you know, it just morphed. You know what I mean? And if you weren't prepared for it, if you're foolish enough, and in any industry, if you're not prepared for it, you know, and don't keep your head up, you know, you're gonna get lost. But specifically with that record, you know, we knew I was able, because we were on Capitol and because we had the budget and everything, you know, it was a wonderful thing to have a budget because then I could pull my friends in, you know. Andy Preboy came in to play piano, you know, I could co-write with people, and you know, it was just, and you know, the studio was great, and we did spend 12 and 15 hours. To me, that's why at my birthday, where do I want to be? I want to be in a studio, you know, with an engineer who's on his toes and just, you know, let my, you know, get manic. And that was the way every record I've ever made, you know. And it's just not a sustainable way of life at a certain age, but I do enjoy being that caught up in the process and just the you know, I played a solo. Gabriel was there, and I did a solo the other night with a volume pedal. It was so beautiful. It was at the end of it, the take. It was just like Gabriel and I just looked up at each other. I'm like, I don't even know where that came from, dude. Because Gabriel, he's pretty cosmic. He's pretty, you know, he's pretty ghosty. He's seen things other people may not believe too. So, you know, but it's just when the magic happens, there's nothing in the world that good, nothing. And it was definitely on. Because in a studio that old, you know, also in L.A. and on Cahuenga where it was, and it just, you know, I tap into all that energy because it's right there. You know, I've heard Keith Richards say the same thing. You know, the song is there. You just got to grab it. And so it involves really, really tuning in and really listening the same way Nikola Tesla did or Joe Meek did, or, you know, it's just a matter. It's very old, borderline, you know, not even borderline. It's just physics. You know, there's stuff to hear. That's why dogs can hear things you can't. So, so it's and the magic was there. It was all really, really there. It was intense, and that's why, like, when the vibes get so intense like that, you know, things crack and things all happen. You know, and I thought that it got so intense that it kind of like just the tension broke with Paul's mom. You know, getting that call from our manager, and he goes, I've already booked him, already got him on a plane, and you know. So that was a real drop from the sky after being so high from what we had done. But it was intense. We were definitely, it wasn't about staying on the planet in the studio, and it still isn't. It's Chris Tangerides who produced Bloodletting and also Walking in London, and was a very dear friend and just passed away last year. The sanctity of the studio was the all-important thing. Leave the world outside and come into where you're supposed to be channeling magic. That's your job. Yeah. And so that's what we were doing, nothing less.
You know, you mentioned, you know, Walking in London, and you also mentioned being manic, and I thought that's the right word because these records were just basically a little over a year apart from each other, which in the 90s, because of the way labels were still doing marketing, was more than lightning fast to do two records like that. Like, that's That's really impressive that this record is still beyond as strong as it is, with Mexican Moon.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was very big on, well, I hear what I hear, and I can't really change it much. So, and I believe in timelessness of art. I was just thinking about that yesterday because I've had a discussion about scenes, who comes out of a scene, and a great art should be so universal that you don't even know where the person's from. You don't look at a painting and go, oh, he was Dutch, or he was this, or he was that, unless you know what you're looking at. But if you don't, obviously, then you just look at a painting and you go, I love this painting. And you don't know whether you got it in a thrift store, whether it was out of the Boston scene or the LA scene or whatever. That always bored me because we had a much bigger picture than that.
Well, there's so many great moments on this that I want to pull up. First off, Rain is probably one of my favorite moments on this, and I know that was an older song kind of put back on
That's
this
right.
one. I don't know that I've ever heard the original version, so I don't have the comparison there, but what an amazing, moment in this record that is. That melody is so strong, and how it's somewhat circular, the song, it kind of goes in that round, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, if you haven't heard the original, it's just a little more innocent. It has a really charming, more of a Velvet Underground sort of effect, which I think I remember what even Jim's brother said at the time. We recorded the original, after working at Gold Star Studios, which is a legendary studio that I worked at for a couple of years, for a while. And Phil Spector recorded all his hits there, and oh my God, Glenn Campbell, and it was just a legendary place. And I got a weekend, I think, or a 12-hour something finally in the studio after working there a couple of years. They were going to throw me a bone and let me have some free time. And so we went in and recorded our first EP, which was called Dream 6. That's what we would call it at the time, Dreamers, and then we changed it to Dream 6. There were 6 songs. And that was a standout song. And it had a more lo-fi quality to it because it never got mixed. We never had time to mix one side of the record. So one side was mixed, the other side wasn't. It was still good, better in my opinion. I thought it was just really good. The energy was really, really good because it was fast. And you'd had all your life to write songs when you go into the studio for the first time. So there was some good stuff there. The deal that I had with, like I said, we weren't really getting along during Mexican Moon, and I was determined that this was the last Concrete Blonde record ever, and that's why Paul was on it and Harry. I brought Harry back to be on it for a couple of songs because I wanted it to wrap up the band, and so I thought it would be a really interesting thing to go back and re-record the first song, just as an homage to ourselves. And it's more polished and it's a little more confident and a little more adult sounding probably. And, not much different really, I don't think, but I haven't listened to it either. So I completely forgot about that. So now I'll probably wonder what the differences are myself.
There's also an interesting thread. It might be coincidence. You might have been trying to go for it. But when you look at a trio of songs, Jonestown, I Call Love, and Jesus Forgive Me, I mean, I don't know if religious undertones is the right way, but there is something in that beyond having just the word Jesus in the title. It seemed like there was maybe something happening there. I don't know. Do you feel that?
Always, yeah, always, definitely. Spirituality is a really important part of my life, and it definitely is all connected, very, very much. Jonestown, the thing about Jonestown was very much like the statement that Syd Barrett was making in The Wall, when he looks out and sees all the people turning into hammers and it turns into a Nazi rally. And it's a fine line between a cult of personality and what are you looking up here to me for? I'm in a rock band and I'm from Hollywood, and all of a sudden now I'm, in Belgium, being asked questions about third world countries and shit, and I don't know. And so I'm like, what do you expect me to be? I'm just, I'm writing songs here and I'm just a street rat. But that's a good thing because I really, I study like a mad person. I'm kind of inclined to do that anyway. I've been in bookworm all my life, but that was really freaky to me, is that people project you're basically just a screen for people. That's what art is, basically. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then so is ugly, and so is everything. So you can, show 3 people the same painting, and they'll all get 3 different meanings out of it. That's what a Rorschach test is. So art's the same way, and a person's the same way. Some people look up to Donald Trump and think he's the guy you all want to be, and some guys look up and see the devil. So you know what I mean? It's kind of like I realized that I was kind of that it kind of had nothing to do with me. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of like that was an education, basically. It was kind of like a disassociation, and then you realize, well, I'm just, I could be anybody, basically, up here, and it's an archetype, and that's what archetypes are. So basically, one person sees one thing, hears one thing, and one person sees and hears another thing. You know what I mean? So that's always been a very odd quirk in humans. You know what I mean? It's like somebody listens to their songs and they're convinced that you're writing them to them. You know what I mean? And where it gets weird. And so that's what Jonestown was. And here's an interesting thing. So you hear Jim Jones, actually. That's actually Jim Jones in the beginning of that track. And it's a recording of him passing out the Kool-Aid, which is one of the goddamn creepiest things you could ever see or hear. Have you ever seen that documentary?
Yeah, I've watched, yeah.
Fuck, dude, that's hardcore. That's like, what the hell, man? And so, anyway, so I found it in Paris, I think, an LP, a 12-inch of the recording of the whole thing going down. It had been recorded by one of the cult members, and it was on vinyl, and I'd found it in this record store, and so I got it, and I had to use it. I think that might have kicked off the writing of the whole song anyway. It galvanized the whole concept. And so, and who owned the recording was Genesis P-Orridge of Throbbing Gristle, and who, I don't know if he'd been in the cult or what, but I called him up, and he was totally cool. Throbbing Gristle, if you don't know Throbbing Gristle, they're like Nine Inch Nails would not be around if there was no Throbbing Gristle. And they were like late 70s, I think, or like full-on, extremely electronic, experimental, industrial, like really spawned a lot of shit, Genesis P-Orridge. And so talked to Genesis for a while, and he was really happy to be, even contacted, and paid him a couple $100, and so ended up using it. And after I used it, I got rid of the record immediately. I didn't want it in the house. It was so bad. We're in the studio laying it down, and it made you just so fucking uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And so I gave it to a collector here in the States someplace. I'm like, you can have it, man, because I just don't even want it in the house. It's so evil, so evil, so evil. But the video to that is also really great, and that was when I wanted us all to look normal until black lights and then turn into skeletons. And so it took a while. The video is us doing that. And then developing it for the stage was very, a real trip. And so we had to develop this makeup and get a black light. It was great. It was really cool. Once again, when you have money, you can do shit. And so we had to get a black light, and we'd get on stage and we'd look perfectly normal. And then when the black light would hit, we'd all turn into skeletons on stage, and people were crazy, and it was all very fun until one night on that tour, we went out, which I rarely do after a show, but went out afterwards, and we'd all taken showers, and we went out to this club. I forget where we were, New Orleans or something, and went out afterwards, and we walk in the club, and the club has a black light, and that shit still was all over us. Even after we showered and bathed, we all look at each other and go, oh, no way, dude. After that, we would pull out whoever the first 2 or 3 people were in line for the show the next night, like who showed up at like noon, like the hardcore fans, and put the makeup on them, and then have them come in and dance around, because that's just the kind of assholes we are.
Yeah, you talk about that imagery. I read that you had opened up the Laughing Nun around that time too, with the specialization in Mexican art and everything. It seemed like that all fit together.
The Lucky Nun, yes.
Lucky Nun.
Anybody?
Yeah.
And thanks for bringing that up, because that was really a cool thing for that neighborhood at the time. It was really, really a good move. It was really very cool. And anybody from LA is influenced by Day of the Dead, Latino art, Chicano art. That's just, it used to be Mexico. That's just the way it is. So if you see anything like, Jane's Addiction or X, Us, it's just part of the fiber of LA, very much so. And I stopped doing it because it got to the point where people would, I like to paint and I've done gallery shows and stuff, and people were requesting a lot of that from me. And I stopped doing it because I felt at a certain point it was appropriating culture, and I would try to point people back. And I can say that I am proud to. I've turned a lot of people on to Latin American art and Spanish colonial and Mexican folk art, and I just love all that stuff. I always have. And it's just Los Angeles, it's a Spanish word, so it's just part. If you're from LA, Los Lobos, even the Go-Go's, it's just, you just have that vibe going, man. I couldn't believe it when we first went out on tour and I couldn't find Mexican food anywhere. It was an outrage.
Well, it's another thing I've always appreciated about you all. I mean, just staring at that cover arts, the way a lot of us did, when we grabbed new albums, especially pre-internet age, you just had the sound coming through the speaker and what you could see in front of you. And I fell in love with all the stuff that you were putting out there.
Thank you. I think a lot of younger people have fallen in love with that concept all over again,
I hope so.
I mean, people are really digging vinyl. Posh Boy, who's an old friend of mine who was a punk pioneer, along with Brett from Epitaph, back in the street days, and he was the first one to put out Black Flag and Henry Rollins and all that lot, Circle Jerks and everything. And he just reissued a old hardcore record that I put out by a band in Long Beach. And so once again, no matter what the genre, if you put that record on now, it sounds like a punk band right now. It just sounds like, and that's just really cool. I've always been attracted to that. No matter what genre it is, the timelessness is what matters, So that transcends. It's just like the way I'm turned on to everything about 1922, about the 20s, just absolutely resonates with me, whether it's a past life thing or what. But you just look at some of those things and go, wow, that's like, timelessness. That's what it's all about. Time doesn't exist anyway. It's a man-made concept. So that's why, you hear a song, you're like, where have I heard that before? It could have been in another lifetime, Waves go out to space, they bounce back, they bounce around, they come back when they're meant to. It's all one wonderful thing.
Well, Johnette, I really appreciate you doing this.
Well, good.
Yeah, so appreciate you talking to me about this, and hopefully we can do this again when more of the new music is out. We can talk about and concentrate on that.
I'd love to. Hit me up when you check it out.
All right, I definitely will. And again, for what it's worth, congratulations on 25 years on a really amazing album with this Mexican Moon.
Thank you very, very much. I wasn't looking at the calendar, but I'm extremely proud of it as well. And I'm especially flattered that you say even after 25 years it sounds as good as it did the first time. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, from Mexican Moon to riding the moon, it's a nice little strand right there. So
yeah, I got a moon fetish. If you lived in the desert, you would too. Thank you very much, and have a good day, honey.
You too. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Uh-huh.
My thanks to Johnette Napolitano right there, talking about the 25th anniversary of Concrete Blonde's Mexican Moon and the new music as well. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, please. Whether you're checking us out on YouTube, whether you're getting this from a podcast, or maybe whether you're listening on Spotify right now, hit that follow button on there. After that, you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern, and where you'll also find some bonus episodes of this series. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.